The story of Cain and Abel, lessons on faith, choices, and God's grace. Adam and Eve's life after Eden marks the beginning of family life and humanity's journey. Through this journey, we encounter two of their sons, Cain and Abel, whose story stirs a deep reflection on our spiritual journeys. Eve gives thanks to God for her childbirth, recognizing his hand in bringing life into the world. Cain, a tiller of the soil, and Abel, a keeper of flocks, both bring offerings to the Lord. Abel offers the fat portions of the firstborn of his flock, symbolizing gratitude and wholehearted devotion. Cain, however, presents fruits from the soil, with no indication of giving his best. The Lord looks favorably on Abel's offering, demonstrating that God values the heart behind our worship over external gestures. This moment challenges us to reflect: do we worship God with sincerity and our best, or do we simply go through the motions? Cain's reaction reveals much about human nature. When his offering is not accepted, anger consumes him. Yet God, in his mercy, engages Cain. He warns, "Sin is crouching at your door. It desires to have you, but you must rule over it." Despite God's warning, Cain invites Abel to the field and commits an act that changes the course of history. He murders his brother out of jealousy. When confronted by God, Cain responds with indifference. "Am I my brother's keeper?" This rhetorical question becomes central to us as believers. Are we, as brothers and sisters in Christ, responsible for one another in love and accountability? Cain's actions caution us on the destructive power of envy, but also call us to examine how we care for those around us. Even in his judgment, God's heart for grace shines through. Cain is cursed to wander, but when he expresses the weight of his punishment, God marks him for protection. Anyone who harms Cain would face vengeance sevenfold. This act embodies God's justice paired with compassion. It reminds us that while sin has consequences, God's mercy is greater, offering forgiveness and covering even when we fall. Cain's life continues as he bears descendants who contribute to the development of society, from raising livestock to creating music and forging tools. While Cain's legacy begins in sin, human history marches forward as a mix of brokenness and creativity. Here, we see that God's plans prevail, even through flawed individuals. It's a reminder that God's grace allows humanity to move forward, no matter how marred the past might be. Within Cain's family line, Lamech demonstrates how sin multiplies when unchecked. He boasts to his wives about murder, declaring that his vengeance exceeds even Cain's. This arrogance contrasts with God's call to humility and peace. The escalation serves as a warning of what happens when we glorify sin, rather than seek God's redemptive power in our lives. After the tragedy of Abel's death and the wandering of Cain, Adam and Eve welcome another son, Seth. Seth's birth brings renewed hope, as humanity begins to call upon the name of the Lord once more. His son, Enosh, represents a turning point where faith becomes central again. The story of Cain and Abel offers timeless lessons for personal and collective reflection. Here are key takeaways. The heart matters in worship. God desires authentic, heartfelt devotion above ritualistic actions. God desires authentic, heartfelt devotion above ritualistic actions. The heart matters in worship. 2. Confront sin early. Like Cain, we often face crossroads. God's warnings remind us to address sin when it first appears. Love one another. Am I my brother's keeper? Echoes as a challenge to live in God's love by building each other up instead of allowing envy or anger to grow. Am I my brother's keeper? Echoes as a challenge to live in God's love by building each other up instead of allowing envy or anger to grow. By building each other up instead of allowing envy or anger to grow. 4. God's grace is greater, even when we fail. His mercy enables healing and restoration. 5. Hope is always possible. The line of Seth encourages us to trust God's plans, no matter what obstacles or failures we face. Hope is always possible. The line of Seth encourages us to trust God's plans, no matter what obstacles or failures we face. The story of Cain and Abel invites us to examine our relationship with God and others. Our worship, choices, and treatment of one another all matter in the eyes of the Lord. Yet it also reassures us of God's enduring mercy and the hope that comes through turning to Him.